Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. NFL Week 3 is almost done. College football Week 4 is done. So we'll start with college football. We'll begin with Miami. They move up to number 2 in the AP poll, and they just got a win over Florida. Andrew, first thoughts on that game?
Yeah, so it was definitely not as exciting as a game as it was built up to be, but in general, as a Miami Hurricanes fan, you love to see like how that game was played out. The offense had it clicking for the first drive and then kind of just went dormant for a little while. They were able to move the ball, but not actually put up a ton of points on the board. And then from the Florida Gators perspective, that offense was just absolutely atrocious. DJ Lagway only had 61 passing yards on just barely over a 50% passing completion percentage. And then also that Florida team, besides one drive, could not put anything together just in general. So where do you go from here as a Florida Gators fan? And how long does Billy Napier last? Both questions that I feel like has to be asked at this point, especially because this is the part of the schedule that was supposed to be the start of the hard part of the schedule. Obviously, they lost to USF as well. But or at least LSU was the hard start of the hard part of the schedule. And then from there, they have a bunch of ranked opponents that they have to play. So the Florida Gators fans are low-key in shambles. And from a Miami Hurricanes fan perspective, it couldn't be going better. Carson Beck could look a little bit better, but besides that, the defense is very much improved, and there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, just a few interceptions there from Beck over the last handful of games, but still nitpicking, and I believe one or two of them weren't even his fault. So at the end of the day, he's looking really good. Shannon Dawson has the offense rolling. I totally think that both these coordinators could be future coaches in college football. Let me start with Florida. As you mentioned, yeah, their schedule is insane. I mean, they got Texas A&M, Texas, even whatever you think about them. Georgia on the way, Florida State all the way down the line. Ole Miss, I believe, at some point in the year as well. So good luck to them. DJ Lagway with 61 total yards. At least he didn't throw 5 interceptions this week, but his future is definitely in doubt. The way that this season could potentially turn out for him and his future NFL draft stock. Been a little bit of rumblings about him transferring potentially. I don't know if that would end up actually happening, but him losing his head coach, I definitely think is a real possibility now for sure. They're playing tough. The Florida defense is still really good, but yeah, Miami just was able to control that game even when Florida got their big touchdown drive and was able to bring it within 6. It felt like they just didn't have enough juice offensively to scare Miami at all. They just need to take care of business down the stretch, which they did, tacked on a couple of those touchdowns. 26-7 is how it ended. And I think that was more reflective of how this game actually went. I think it's awesome the way that Corey Heatherman and this entire, program has been able to redo this defense. I'll say this every single time we go on. Imagine this defense with Cam Ward. I don't even know where this team would have ended up being. But yeah, Reuben Bain getting the light Heisman buzz. This defensive line just in general, also with Akeem Mesidor, is just elite, I would say, as well. And they're going to have some serious buzz as far as maybe getting to number 1 eventually. I know Penn State and Oregon play, so potentially this number 2 ranking while Miami's on a bye could fade a little bit. They might go down to 3 if Penn State wins, but still, regardless, they have a chance to get it back in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and one thing that I've really liked through the first couple of weeks is that they really have proven like that the ranking is very much deserved. I feel like they've come into a couple of different games where you could look at these games as like just kind of games that the other team needs to win, and games that Miami could be a little bit just not as aggressive as they could have been. But I don't know. Like, this offense has looked really good. I think the running backfield has looked really good. Jordan Lyle didn't even play last game, and Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown had great games, both of them over 80 yards. Mark Fletcher with 116 and a touchdown. The receiving core, it was raining, and Carson Beck just didn't have his greatest game of all time. But I mean, that receiving core is probably one of the best in the nation. CJ Daniels only had 4 catches for 16 yards, but he's a great player, transfer from LSU. And then the freshman, Malachi Tony, who I'm super high on. I think that he's just going to have an amazing career at So exciting to see that from the offensive side of the ball. And while this offense isn't as good as it was last year, they lose 6 of their top 7 receivers, and then also the number 1 overall pick in the draft. I still think that this offense is at the very least serviceable, if not very good, and that defense is much improved. It's 1,000 times better than it was last year. That is, like you mentioned, a testament to the coordinators that they brought in. And Heatherman has been really good for them coming out of Minnesota. And just in general, this Miami team looks really, really good. So although they might drop to 3 after the Penn State, if Penn State gets a win, or even if Oregon gets a win, I think this Miami team is almost a lock for the college football playoff, and definitely one of the best teams in college football so far.
I know it's a little bit off topic, but one thing I was doing, kind of researching a little bit as the season was coming up, was I didn't realize that Heatherman was a former QB and called plays. Like, he's got play calling resume. And I just think that that's really cool. Like, he's been on both sides of the ball. That's why I definitely think he's a guy I could see coaching a program. I mean, obviously recruiting and NIL's got a big thing about it, but whenever it comes to those interviews, can you do that? But I definitely think he can run a program potentially down the line. But yeah, you mentioned the run game before we move on. This Miami team had 184 yards on the ground. That's 4 yards per carry. That's really good. The Florida Gators had 29 carries for 80 yards, 2.8 per rush. So that difference just monumental in the way that they were able to control this game. And the Florida just didn't have enough. Now, whoever tells you that this game was close, or that they really they played Miami tough. I always want to give the other team credit, however which way things go. But people saying that this game was close, the score when it was 13-7 midway through the fourth, I'll give it to you. But I promise, watching this game, that Florida team could not move the ball whatsoever. That really killed any type of momentum that they potentially could have built. If the Florida team could move the ball, and this is a testament to Miami that they couldn't, maybe there was something. But that's a major if, because they couldn't do anything at all except for one drive.
They said on the broadcast like a million times that the score felt like much more than it was when it was only 13-0. And it was just, it felt like Miami was very much in control of that game the whole time. And it wasn't like the offense wasn't moving the ball. They were just stalling a little bit. So, and that'll happen. Like, the conditions were absolutely like they weren't the worst that I've ever seen, but they weren't great. And that's a testament to the run game as well, because they were able to average 4 yards a carry. They were able to almost get 200 yards on the ground. So that's not a terrible defensive line from Florida. And just in general, that Florida defense is not bad at all. So they got a lot of opportunities because of the fact that TJ Lagway had a ton of 3 and outs and just wasn't playing well at all. But I think that the Miami offense and the Miami defense are definitely clicking, and I want to see not weather no weather in the Florida State game, and just see these two teams at their best, and we'll see what it chops up to being. But that game is definitely exciting for Miami coming off a bye in 2 weeks.
So also in week 4, Indiana welcomed in Illinois for a top 20 Big Ten matchup. Indiana had played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. So there was some questions about, can they take care of business against a valiant foe within their conference? And I think they answered it pretty well. Pretty well, you'd say. 63-10. This game was a massacre. Kurt Signetti, man, Google me, bro. I don't know. I'm not a big buyer of Indiana, but I'll let you go first. This seems real, so I might be changing my tune here soon.
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest things that they did over the offseason is they went out and got a quarterback to replace Curtis Rourke, and that proved to be a really good decision, going with Fernando Mendoza out of Cal, former Miami guy as well, from Miami at least. But he played really well at Cal, a little bit underrated. He gave the Miami Hurricanes all they could handle last year with Cam Ward, and just in general, a really good quarterback. Obviously, lesser competition for the first 3 games, maybe Old Dominion less so, because they have 2 wins on their schedule, including Virginia Tech. But 14 touchdowns to 0 interceptions over the first 4 games. He absolutely sliced up that Illinois secondary, and just in general, that offense looked like it can move the ball at will, while on the other side of the ball, that defense kept Illinois stagnant. So in general, I think Indiana is for real, but how for real are they? I think they're just about as for real as they were last year. Could I see them sneaking into a college football playoff with 12 teams? Sure. Are they competing for the Big Ten championship? Actually, I think that's a stretch. I think that teams like Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State are just a level above, which is kind of how it is in the Big Ten with Michigan some years as well. But those top 3 to 4 teams are pretty solidified, and Indiana can sneak in there and be competitive. But do I see them breaking past those 3 teams? Probably not.
it's tough because I don't want to have any sort of like confirmation bias here about when I think about their schedule. They're like, oh, like I don't think that they can beat teams like Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State, but I can't move the goalpost on this team because I would have thought that this would have been a lot closer. And I thought Illinois was going to be a little bit better. And clearly that they're not on that level. But this was such a dominant win that I got to give it to Indiana. And I got to say that, yeah, maybe it's a similar team to last year where like, can they reach the upper echelon of this conference? Can they string together a win or two in the playoffs? Like, I don't know. But this team dominating Illinois, when they have so many returners, and Luke Altmaier, I think, is a good QB. Like I got to start thinking, man, maybe there's something here to it. And I'm glad that you also mentioned Old Dominion. They got a coach fired for that win against Virginia Tech, so more power to them. I don't know actually how good they are, but yeah, dude, I don't know. I'm starting to come around on it. Just because it was such a dominant win. If it was a close win, I probably would say no, but I got to give some credit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree too. That was definitely a little bit pessimistic towards the end.
But I'm glad that you put me in my like place a little bit too when I initially said I wasn't buying them. So go, but yeah.
Yeah, I am. I just think that this team, like when you look at it holistically, like it is a little bit rough because they do play in the Big Ten and they have to play Penn State and Oregon in the same year. So that is two games where you'd kind of, at this point, you have no idea what's going to happen because Oregon or Penn State haven't really played anybody, and the one team that Indiana's played, they absolutely dominated. But as a general rule of thumb, you'd think that Oregon and Penn State are going to be at the very least very hard games. So that. Do I think they can be competitive in a game versus either of those two teams? Sure. I'm just not completely there on them yet. But what we saw out of them was like a game for the ages for Indiana, especially versus a team that was in the top 10. Illinois, like you said, had Luke Altmaier, and there's just a ton of returners along. They had a really great season last year, but they just barely missing out on the college football playoff. But Indiana, like, they weren't supposed to be this good. It felt like they were coming into this game. So the number 19 team in the nation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe even like unranked coming into the season. So, or at the very least, at the very bottom of the rankings. So, in general, this Indiana team is massively overperformed through even just through 4 games. And besides that Penn State and Oregon game, they should be favorites for any game that they play here on out.
Started the year 20, moved down to 23 after the win against Old Dominion, which was 27-14. But I thought you were kind of going in a specific spot, but I'll head there because I know you mentioned like didn't know exactly how good they would be. I think it's a really important thing to just mention too how far ahead of schedule they are and what Curt Cignetti has done with this program. It's one of those things where it's like they're still playing with house money a little bit, but now the media narrative around it is kind of waiting to see if they can actually make the next jump, which I know is tough, but it's like they're moving so quickly. That's almost where we're at right now, right? But I'm not like in the know about everything Indiana as far as like his future there, what he's potentially building. So I'm just kind of speaking just as a general fan right now when it comes to what I'm about to say, but I really hope he doesn't leave. Because I don't know if I'm sure there's going to be plenty of offers, right? There'd be plenty of programs that want to pay him a ton of money to come and rebuild them or take them to the next step or what have you. But I really hope that he sees this through because this is like a story that you almost never see. I can't really put my finger on if it's happened in the last 5 years or so. But taking a team at the bottom of a conference and absolutely flipping it. I'm curious if he can make that next jump. Dabo kind of did it with Clemson a little bit there way back when, was able to make that jump into being a national contender, a true dominant team in college football. Can he do it? I mean, he's on pace for it. He's past the pace for it.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at his post-game press conferences, sometimes it's always a great watch. Like I think this week he said that we just broke their will, which is exactly what happened in this game. There was never really, when you're watching that game, you never really thought that Illinois even had a relative chance at winning this game, and that just speaks to how good Indiana is. And I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. But Indiana is definitely a team that you have to look out for the next coming weeks. And no matter who they play, they are definitely at least going to be competitive, I feel like.
All right. Well, I mentioned Dabo and Clemson. Let's move into them. They're at maybe the end of the journey, potentially, depending on who you would ask. They're 1-3 now. They just dropped a game to Syracuse, who is a good team, but still dropped a game against them. Right now, what are we thinking about the program and everything surrounding the noise with the Tigers?
Yeah, so this season was supposed to be possibly the season for Clemson, right? They were favorites in the ACC. They were favorites to make the college football playoff and probably be one of the top 4 seeds. And now it just all feels like it's crumbling apart, which is unfortunate for Dabo, Swinney, and the crew. But I I don't know if this like I don't know if we should have seen this coming. Like I don't think that there was any way to, especially with how many returners they had. But like that team, even last year, right, struggled throughout the course of the regular season for an extended period of time. Won some close games, was able to sneak into the college to the ACC championship and eventually to the college football playoff. But that team with the returners on defense should have been really good. But if Cade Klubnik isn't clicking, that offense isn't very good, and we've seen that in a couple games now. And Syracuse just dominated that game. Really, there was a big delay, and even still, like that, it didn't reset anything for that Clemson offense. It still didn't look that good. And when you're just looking from it holistically, like what were they favored by 2 touchdowns in that game? Like you think that Clemson is the much better team, and they've just been struggling all season long. Like Georgia Tech, they shouldn't. That game was like closer to an even spread, but still they shouldn't have lost that game. And just in general, LSU coming out to start the season, they were favorites in that game at home. Just in general, the season hasn't looked very good. I don't think that there's a way that it's even recoverable at this point. If there's only 2 losses, only 1 ACC loss, there's a chance they make it to the ACC championship and possibly win the ACC championship, get into the big dance. But at this point, there's no way I don't think that they even have a remote shot at making it to the college football playoff, and their college football championship hopes are essentially over through 4 games. So really bleak for Clemson, just really bleak for Dabo Swinney. His press conferences get worse and worse by the week.
Yeah, that's I think the part that I don't like the most is just Dabo has built this program. You associate Clemson with Dabo and vice versa. And I don't really want to see this come to an end. I'm not an avid Clemson hater in that regard. I feel like it shouldn't. Yeah, he was late to the transfer portal, but they're still doing it. They're doing plenty of NIL there at Clemson. They got to do it, even if you hate it. And they've been, in my opinion, a real good example of at least building a program from where they weren't national contending, below. For the bottom of the ACC and building it all the way up. And they've stuck around for a very long time. Now, if you had asked me a couple weeks ago, just moving into this season and not the kind of general legacy of Dabo, I would have said that this schedule eased up a little bit. I knew Steve Angeli was a great quarterback right now, getting his chance at Syracuse, coming from Notre Dame, and Georgia Tech, certainly underrated. But even in those games, I would have liked to see more. So I am a little bit skeptical when I do say this, but they do only have Florida State the rest of the way. I don't know what South Carolina is going to be at the end of this year. I think they'll pick it up from where they are now, but there is a bit of a path as far as within the conference. If they do pick it up, they have to win out. But there's always that chance in the ACC. Things can get kind of messy. You never know. SMU is also fallen pretty far. So it's essentially just trying to catch up to Florida State and Miami. One of them is going to get a conference loss in a couple weeks. So maybe there's a path, and I think that that's how you look at it. Glad you mentioned Klubnik. Dang, I don't know what his 2026 NFL draft stock is looking like anymore because, this team, if he's not working, they're not playing well, and they're 1-3. So that should tell you how he's playing.
Yeah, I maybe want to push back on the conference being like the ACC in general this year. I don't think that either Miami or FSU will have 2 losses. I think that the loser of that game probably won't lose again in the conference. So I just don't really. I see what you're saying, but I don't really see a path, especially because they have to play FSU. If they did end up winning that game, that'd be an absolute shocker to me. And at that point, then maybe they have a shot. But I don't see it based off how they've been playing the first couple weeks, and it just really feels like that team is like a broken shell of themselves at this point now. Like it feels like every week it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. Like that team didn't come out with any passion or any effort, like anything abnormal that you would like to see out of a team that's really faced, like this was their backs against the wall, right? Like you don't want to follow down 2 games in the ACC through 2 games like played in the conference. And that I understand Steve Angeli came into this game with a lot of hype, and he's a good quarterback. Unfortunate for him getting injured in this game. But it's Clemson and it's Syracuse. Like there's a reason why they're 14.5-point favorites. There's a reason why the team has been just so good for such an extended period of time. And I don't see there being any hope for Clemson like this the rest of the way, especially because of the fact that they will have to play FSU at some point. at home against the FSU, but still, I don't think that makes it that big of a difference. They'll have 3 conference losses, and I don't think that they get anywhere close to the ACC championship game.
For Florida State, I think we're going to know a lot more about them before they play Miami with this Virginia game. I'm a little bit more skeptical about them, and I do think that they're going to lose to Miami. So it just comes down to, can they end up, running the table the rest of the way within the conference. So that was kind of where I was headed. But yeah, the Steve Angeli injury, it sucks, but it was kind of supposed to be something that maybe leaves the door open. And Syracuse didn't really miss a beat. The backup came in and threw a touchdown, and they were able to put up enough points to the tune of 34, and Clemson just didn't have any offense. So I get what you're saying there. I haven't really seen anything too inspiring. I think they'll beat UNC in their next game, and I believe they're on a bye this coming week, which they need badly. If there's any team in the country that needs it, it's Clemson. Let's move to the NFL. The Rams versus the Eagles. The Rams were up on the Eagles early in this game, and the Eagles made it all the way back, blocked the field goal at the very end of the game, returned it all the way for a touchdown. What are we thinking about this game from the Eagles' perspective first?
Yeah, so from the Eagles' perspective, I think that they finally realized that Jalen Hurts is also good at throwing the football, which is something that you really want to discover out of your quarterback. Through the first 2 games, he looked absolutely atrocious and let's not say absolutely atrocious. He definitely didn't play to his best, but like that last game, especially, like he had less than 200 yards. It just wasn't looking very good against the Chiefs. And granted, the Chiefs, and by less than 200 yards, I mean 101 total passing yards, and they just weren't getting the ball to either of their star players. But this game, the offense woke up. Devontae Smith had a good game, and it took them a while to get going. But at the point that they did, they really flipped the script, and it almost felt like this was coming from an Eagles perspective when they were down 26-7. And then like they scored, and then it was 26-14, and it just felt like the Eagles were going to come back at least like to make it a game. It didn't feel like this game was just going to be a blowout the whole time, but then for them to come all the way back, especially the way that they did, and to get the blocked field goal at the end and then have it ran all the way back, just completely unnecessary too. I know that there's some Rams like bettors that had plus 2.5 or whatever the spread was that are super upset about that, but the Hurts-led offense did look better this game. Saquon Barkley didn't have the best game, but it didn't matter because when Jalen Hurts is on his game, we've seen in 2 Super Bowls now, his peak is like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and when they're on. I think the stat is now that they've won 18 in their last 19. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. So that's what I've got on the Eagles.
Easily a clear Super Bowl contender. And if you had forgotten or thought that Jalen Hurts wasn't good enough to lead this team, I think that was case in point there. That could be wrapped up. It's kind of a shame, and not that you were saying this, but that people were thinking like he had like lost anything or just wasn't that guy. I mean, Jalen Hurts plenty of times whenever his name is called on can deliver, and they did that against the Rams. It's got to be pretty crushing for the Rams, but it was really good for the Eagles. And awesome to see A.J. Brown. He had 109 yards in this game, getting the receivers a little bit involved. No frustration really going on as far as that's concerned. So that was good to see. This Eagles team is probably just as advertised. Going from the Rams perspective, I'll start first. This is just the sucky loss just because it feels like you're so close to 3-0. Great start to the year. You've already got that win over the Texans. Well, I don't know what they're going to be this year, but still you got that win. And now you're about to go get this Eagles win. And I definitely think that's a really good, resume to start the year. Puka Nacua was just unbelievable too on that final drive. Him and Stafford working really well. Stafford doesn't seem to miss a beat, even though he missed all of training camp. Kyron Williams still pretty solid, 20 carries for 94 yards. And they had this game in the bag. They just, the Eagles, you got to give credit to the Eagles. It's a little bit of both. The Rams kind of giving it away a little bit and the Eagles taking it. But if you're the Rams, just kind of a little soul crushing, moving into the next week.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because when you come out of halftime, you recover a fumble, and then you go out 1-play touchdown, 10-yard touchdown. And then from there, your next couple drives are punt, turnover on downs, and then 2 back-to-back block field goals. So they came out after halftime and got their 1-play score, and then kind of just the offense stagnated a little bit. And it was super unfortunate because while their offense was stagnating. Like the Eagles offense, like wasn't missing a beat. They went touchdown, a turnover on downs, and then another touchdown. So when you look at those drives, the exact opposite happened for the Rams and Eagles. And the Rams kind of just gave that game away and let it slip away, really, because two back-to-back blocked field goals and then one of them to seal the game is absolutely absurd. So unfortunate loss for the Rams. I still think the Rams are one of the best teams in the NFL, and they play the Eagles really well maybe not every single game ever, but like the last 2 years, it's felt like they're one of the biggest tests for the Eagles. That obviously they had the closest game that the Eagles played in the playoffs last year, and something about that defense, something about a new offense with Devontae Adams instead of Cooper Kupp. I think that's an upgrade, and Matthew Stafford looking good. They didn't get many drives in the second half, but the ones that they did have, they didn't capitalize on, and the Eagles definitely did.
Well, we talked a little bit about the 2026 QB draft class earlier. This looks like it's really, really bad. And the way that it's shaping up right now, who is a potential number 1 overall pick, who are even the potential first round picks, it's looking bleak. I'll give you kind of the first word on this for, NFL, from the NFL perspective. Like, do any of these guys look good? I mean, when you look at some of these other college guys, are they even going to declare?
Yeah, your face when saying that just makes me not want to even look at these.
I'm looking at the list of guys we got right now too. So that was where it was from.
Yeah. So, as somebody who roots for one of the worst teams in the NFL at this point, or
Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, the Miami Dolphins. This quarterback draft class does not get you excited at all. And I'm one of those guys who kind of wants to move off to at this point, and would be open to taking a being really bad for a season, just looking at the next quarterback class. The people that it came into the season, like being like, oh, these are the guys who you kind of want on your team. I think there were like some mock drafts had 5 guys going in the first round. Those guys include Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, Lenore Sellers, Cade Klubnik, Sam Levitt, guys like that. I'm a healthy pass on at this point. Obviously, we're only a couple games into the college football season, but man, Arch Manning is staring down guys on Sam Houston State after having 3 straight bad games. Garrett Nussmeier could have looked better in a lot of games that he's played. He didn't. He's in a game where the other quarterback turned the ball over 5 times, his team only won by 10 points, and he barely put up any points himself. Lenore Sellers has been injured a little bit, but he doesn't look exactly like the trajectory from him has been like more level than anything else this season. Cade Klubnik has looked absolutely terrible, and Sam Levitt has had his good games and bad games. So in general, when you're looking at it from an NFL perspective, do any of these guys stick out to you as people that you'd want to lead your franchise going into the future? I can't say that they do at this point, and it's really unfortunate because going into a draft, you always think that there's a couple guys, like 2 to 3 at least, it feels like in today's NFL, where you look at them preseason, you're like, wow, those guys are going to be good in the NFL. There isn't anybody that you look at right now that kind of floats your boat at this point, and especially the guys that really you came into the preseason looking at.
And are you willing to say yes to Carson Beck? I don't know right now, and we're both, talking a lot about Miami football, but it's just a wait and see with him. And yeah, you kind of ran through him. I mean, Klubnik, not so much. Nussmeier, just uninspiring, even though that LSU is winning games. And then Sam Levitt, Arizona State itself kind of fell off the map after the Mississippi State loss. So maybe depending on how they end the year, there could be some rumblings, but then it's like, he just feels more like 2027 now. And I don't know. We talked about Fernando Mendoza a little bit earlier. I'd have to double check his situation. I mean, DJ Lagway seems to have also kind of fallen off the face of the earth. He's probably just looking to make sure that his college career doesn't go by the wayside with whatever Florida ends up trying to do. Lenore Sellers obviously dealing with his injury, and South Carolina's 2-2. That not exactly what they wanted this year. They were hoping to take another jump forward. Nico, not so, definitely not right now, especially the way that UCLA is going. So it's like, you're just like, well, I don't know. And Arch Manning, of course, I don't know how I left him to be the last one that I talk about, but that's 2027 if I've ever seen it. I don't know if I even see him potentially trying to like any 2026 buzz building for him at any point, even if he does turn it around. I think the first 4 games here have looked the way they have, and that sticks into NFL GM's mind a lot. And against Sam Houston, he was fine too. So stunting on the defensive players, everything and what have you, but not there just yet, and that's fine too. It's fine with all of these guys if they're not ready. But for 2026, for these NFL teams, that's a really odd position because, as you mentioned, there's always at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, and there's a couple of franchises that are going to be definitely looking for quarterbacks going into this draft, but this is a draft where you might just say there's guys on the defensive side of the ball where you think they're elite talents, and that's where you go with the first couple of picks in the draft. Because genuinely, I don't really see where people go at this point. There's definitely some guys that are sticking out and having good seasons. Sawyer Robinson came into the season at Baylor with a lot of hype, and his draft stock is definitely like increasing by the game. But I mean, like, some of these guys you'd like to see as like generational talents, or somebody that like just doesn't come out of nowhere. And some of these guys aren't coming out of nowhere, but still, like, those main guys that we talked about, like, that were supposed to be the leaders in this draft class, those guys that had people picking up 5 guys in the first round, like, none of them have looked up to par, which is super unfortunate, because some of those guys, either by name or by previous seasons, you thought had a genuine chance at going in the first round this year. And it looks like all of them, maybe the defenses in college football are just getting too good this year, but none of them have looked up to snuff, unfortunately.
And when you take a look at the previous years of the quarterbacks in the first round, I think it maybe it doesn't surprise a ton of people, because I know there's this feeling that there's always kind of guys who end up popping up in the first round. But some years it's light, others it's not. You got Caleb Williams. Well, we'll go back 2 years ago. This past year was Cam Ward, Jackson Dart. But a couple years ago, 5 QBs in the first 12 picks. The year before that, you obviously had Bryce Young, CJ Stroud going in the top 2. And then 2022 is how far you'd have to go back when that draft class looks like awful, outside of Brock Purdy, who was the last QB taken in the draft. You know, Malik Willis got a lot of pre-draft buzz. You're thinking he's going to go a little bit higher. Then the closer you got, maybe not so much. Then he falls all the way to the 3rd round in that draft. So it's been a few years since we've had a draft like this. This definitely means that free agency for these vet QBs, or whoever's looking to get paid and move on from their team, or whatever backup quarterback you want to invest in, is going to be the move for a lot of these NFL franchises. You're going to have a lot of bridge quarterbacks next year, or again, depending on who you're rooting for. Then that's just the nature of the beast. Let's move into winners and losers of week 3 in the NFL. Andrew, give us the losers.
Yeah, so this is quickly turning into one of my favorite segments that we do. For losers, I think the 49ers, and just like everybody who roots for them in general, it is a sad day to be a 49ers fan once again. And you really have to start looking at that training staff and reevaluating what is going on there, because it feels like consistently, it doesn't feel like it, consistently they are one of the most injured teams in the league. And some of these injuries are just very concerning. Obviously, like, part of why we're doing this is because Nick Bosa was just announced out for the season, and Brock Purdy, obviously their starting quarterback, has been out for a couple weeks now. George Kittle got hurt in the first game of the season, so just key players to their whole, like, the whole 49ers movement, like the players that like have led them to great seasons in the past, are now like on the IR, if not out for a couple weeks, and it just doesn't look good for the 49ers. In terms of like players and like having a next man up mentality for like 5 different guys now. In general, it looks decent because of the fact that they came into this season with one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, if not the easiest. And the fact that they are 3-0 is definitely great. But when you're looking postseason, you're looking to teams that are actually going to be competitive, and teams that you're going to have to look forward to in the future. Not having guys like Nick Bosa, and then having Brock Purdy coming off a major injury at this point, and maybe not major, but injuries that sidelined him for multiple weeks. And then George Kittle, however he looks in the postseason, it just isn't great. And the 49ers in general are one of the most beat up teams again, and we're only 3 weeks through the season.
The NFL and whoever wins the Super Bowl has a lot to do with health. And this is a violent game, but I will have to get on the boat with you here about the training staff. I don't know if there's something going on here, but we might need to look at that, because this is really bad. I've never seen a team with the Super Bowl window as long as the 49ers deal with so many injuries and overcome. But even with all the stuff that they have potentially going for them still this year, like being 3-0 and having the easy schedule in the NFL, I think it might be too much. I agree. They're definitely losers.
100%. And then moving on, the second loser for this week is Saints fans because they have to watch the Saints play and actually try and attempt to enjoy it. I mean, there's so much that goes into being a Saints fan at this point, and having to flip on your TV and then realizing that consistently you're gonna have to root for either Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck is a miserable existence. And looking forward, even if Tyler Shuck ends up not being the guy, and they realize that very quickly. We just had a segment recapping the fact that there aren't many people that you're going to be moving on to if it's not free agency, at least in this upcoming draft. So being a Saints fan has got to be hard, because at some point it was the defense that like really was the outlier and was really good for this team. But that defense is getting old, and they don't have as many guys on that team due to salary cap and just that team getting old, as I mentioned. So being a Saints fan has to be depressing at this point. I think the score is 38-6 at halftime, and they kicked essentially a pity field goal to go into halftime, not 38-3. The Seahawks are a good team, but not a great team. The fact that they got dominated like that, and Spencer Rattler looked as bad as he did, isn't great for Saints fans moving forward.
Terrible for Saints fans. I think you said it all with them. They had a couple really competitive weeks against the Niners and the Cardinals, but things just fell off the rails here against the Seahawks. They got the Bills next week too, so this looks like 0-4. Oh, I'll go with my losers. I'm kind of forgetting that we're doing just the loser. I almost forgot you were not going to go to the winners just yet. I have the Bengals. We talked a lot about quarterbacks today. With Joe Burrow out, we mentioned that this could be a potential lost season for the Bengals. And the very first game, they face another talented team without their starting quarterback, and they get absolutely murked by Carson Wentz and the crew, which I'll say every QB outside of J.J. McCarthy in that Kevin O'Connell offense is looking great, but he didn't have any pressure on him because that Minnesota defense was flying around. But yeah, the Bengals with Jake Browning, I mean, the late game heroics against the Jags, despite his 3 interceptions, I believe, last week, did not translate into this game. And they have plenty of pieces. I mean, the defense is suspect, and so is the offensive line. But, it makes it tough to get it out to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But they got plenty of receivers, and it's just not working. And I don't think it will.
Yeah, I think that probably fantasy owners of any of those receivers are also losers this week. T. Higgins had one catch for I don't know how many yards, but he had a god awful week. And people that took Jamar Chase 1-1, I remember going into a fantasy draft being like, man, that's the guy this year. Like he's Triple Crown winner. Joe Burrow is going to get him the ball. That defense sucks, but man, anybody who has those guys has got to be feeling a little bit bad right now. And I think you put it pretty well. The Bengals just look absolutely atrocious in that game. And they found a way to win, even despite Jake Browning coming in halfway through that game and still managing to throw 3 picks. He looked even worse against the Vikings defense. That is a step up from the Jags defense, but Brian Flores, former Miami Dolphins legend, is put them to shame.
So my other loser is that how this moment between Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud aged post game. If you remember last year, he was kind of giving him some of that advice or what have you. And Caleb Williams and the Bears got a win against a terrible Cowboys defense, but a win is a win is a win. And CJ Stroud and the Texans moved to 0-3, and that offense still looks bad. Life comes at you fast. And I figured in week 3, just looking at it from this lens, that moment, it's been around social media too. Doesn't really look all that great right now. Not ready to say Caleb Williams is better than CJ Stroud, but in week 3 of the 2025 NFL season, that was definitely the case.
Yeah, and CJ Stroud just hasn't looked good for an extended period of time now. Essentially all of last year and then bleeding into this year. The fact that he really that clip is just so funny on its own, standing alone. But given the context now of CJ Stroud, his career kind of just plummeting from there, and then also Caleb Williams not being on the rise, but at least having this good game, and CJ Stroud again only being able to put up 10 points this week. It definitely looks funny because he's like, let me give you some advice, bro. This is what you're going to need to know as a former rookie. And then for it just completely flip on you is one of those situations where it feels like life just comes at you fast sometimes.
All right, let's start with the winners now.
Yeah, so for my winners, I have the Panthers, but just this week specifically, they posted the first shutout of the season and also scored 30 points on offense. So good game for them. How real are the Falcons is yet to be determined. I'm higher on the Falcons than a lot of other people are, higher on Michael Penix than a lot of people are. But this was an impressive win on both sides of the ball. The offense for the Falcons couldn't get anything going, and Bryce Young at least looked halfway decent. Does this convince me that Bryce Young is the guy or that he is the quarterback of the future for the Panthers? No, but it probably bought him a couple of weeks, especially given how good of a win this looked like on paper. So the Panthers this week, definitely winners, but come back to me in 2 weeks and I'll probably say that they're still near the bottom of the NFL.
Yeah, when you're starting QB throws for 121 yards and you win by 30 points, yeah, I mean, it probably had something to do with the defense, and that's certainly what it was. I'm lower on the Falcons than a lot of people, but yeah, for the Panthers, keeps you afloat. Not 0-2, not 0-3. You're 1-2. Keep it moving, keep it pushing. A win is a win is a win.
A win is a win is a win.
Yeah.
And then for the other winner I have, the Vikings defense, namely Isaiah Rodgers, who had a pick six and 2 forced fumbles, as well as a fumble recovery for a touchdown on the forced fumble that he created himself. He himself outscored the Bengals this week, which I just thought was a fun stat. And then also in general, he had probably the game of his life, if not one of the best defensive games we've ever seen in the NFL, especially from a corner. Like, I don't know that you can get any better than that. Forcing fumbles as a corner is one of the harder things to do. Just trying to poke at the ball and see if you can get one, but not only poking one out, but poking 2 out, but then also returning one for a touchdown and having a pick six in the same game. That is one of the best defensive games that I've ever watched. And then that defense was just stifling for Browning. Obviously, it's a backup quarterback, and he wasn't going to have the greatest game no matter what. That defense is a good defense in general, but that defense can give you life. And I think that if you look at them holistically, when J.J. McCarthy gets back, you start to look at him, and if he can just be serviceable, and get the ball out to Justin Jefferson and the other players that they have on that team, Jordan Addison, they could be a really good team, and that defense is definitely one of the best in the NFL. So if you're looking for just a winner for a defense specifically, the Vikings are definitely a team that fits that category.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals were my losers. The Vikings just played amazing. Shout out Isaiah Rodgers, UMass. I have no connections, but I think that's awesome that he's out of there. But I'll move into my winners now. We talked a lot about the Eagles' performance just earlier, so I'll run through that really quickly. Being able to get a comeback win in front of your home crowd against a team that you beat last year in the playoffs, huge stuff. Everybody talking about the tush push, me included. And you shut up the haters, and Jalen Hurts plays well. Perfect storm, and you end with an exclamation point. Good stuff from them. The Colts, who I don't think we've mentioned at all today, are 3-0. I know they just beat a Titans team who is definitely struggling, but neither of us are really buying them. And we still said in week 2, even beyond this game against the Titans, we're going to need to see more. But got to acknowledge that they are definitely a big winner, because this Daniel Jones resurgence is definitely starting to build, and they deserve some credit for a week 3 win, even if it was against the Titans, because this is still the NFL any given Sunday. And the credit is now here with them being my winner.
Yeah, we've given them all the credit that they deserve at this point, and we'll keep it that way. I think that the Colts definitely look like a good team holistically, and we'll see where they end up. But I think that Daniel Jones and that offense is clicking like a lot of people didn't think that they were going to. And I think that those are both solid winners. The Eagles kind of shutting up everybody that is talking about them, especially given the fact that they have so many people that dislike them, but they don't lose. Like, they have won 18 of their last 19 games. They're one of the best teams in the NFL, and they can get it done any way they kind of want. They can get it done in a low scoring game. They can beat you in a shootout too. So I think both those are good. The Colts get the recognition, and 2-3-0 teams for the winners.
And this is also before the Lions and Ravens game has finished. So that's a big little note there if you made it all the way to the end of the video. But okay, I think we've talked just about everything possible. Honorable mention, I think, as another loser, just separately from this, is the Saints getting called for the false start on the tush push this week. That made me really mad. I just thought that this play was not able to be reffed, and apparently it can be to other teams. And now, granted, if they're committing a false start, that's fine too. I don't mind it. Call it on every team if they're committing a false start. So just felt like that should have also been said. Any memorable thing that you saw this weekend before we get out of here?
Tell him, Pat. tell them.
Yeah,
They need to know that they can't be ref this way. But
I mean, also that game was a blowout, 38-6, as you mentioned at halftime. I mean, give them something.
Yeah. Memorable part of this week, Tua Tagovailoa making it through the Bills game this year. This is the game last year that saw him lose out for a couple weeks. So the fact that the Dolphins were able to be competitive and Tua is still healthy throughout this game is a win for me and my memorable part of this week.
I think I'm enjoying college football and the NFL just being where it is. I want to mention a ton of these different teams that we didn't even get to talk about. Chargers are 3-0.
Oh,
Got a good win against the Broncos. I feel like that's something to watch. Are they a team in the AFC that really takes that next step? And also, by the way, in that same breath, Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs took care of the Giants. And it is the Giants. It is what it is. Jackson Dart will probably be starting in a couple weeks by anybody's measure, but they did what they needed to do and they took care of business. And by the way, they're 1-2, and they're probably still going to at least win a playoff game or two. So don't forget about them either. But I think that covers everything here. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Big Little Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That's Andrew Greig, and we'll see you guys next time.